Welcome to the Huddle Within podcast, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the real impact of sports in our lives. Whether it's lessons of resilience, the passion that fuels us, or the stories that connect us all. This is where the game gets personal. I am Daniel, a regular sports fan like you, and together we'll explore what sports truly means beyond the surface. So step right into the huddle and let's get into it. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. If you're new, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We do episodes every single Wednesday, talking about a range of different topics, from the deeper meaning of sports into some exploratory different stuff as well. So be keen to have you guys into the huddle and into our little community that I've got going. And for those that have been listening before, feel free to leave a comment and keep the discussion within there, and also giving me, some opinions or some topics that you would love me to uncover. So for this week's episode, we're going to go into one that kind of resonates with my certain playing style and kind of the way that I go about my sports, and it's the importance of a role player, especially within modern sports. The reason why, as mentioned, I wanted to discuss this one is I like to think that I'm sort of a role player and not a superstar. And to be honest, I do get kind of frustrated that the superstars get all the credit for all the good work, and us role players don't really get that same credit. And I see it within professional sports as well. So don't really want to make it as to why me personally should be getting credit for my roles, but more so for those in the professional levels, the ones that actually make the millions, the ones that win championships, and the ones that actually play it on the highest level of all. But again, we do see sometimes the media talk about these role players and emphasize the importance, but I feel as though they don't get the limelight they deserve. And we also always see the limelight going towards the superstars. So they're always grabbing the headlines. They're always the ones that are talked about. They're the ones that are perceived to be the main key focal point, which is true. But at the same time, with so many sports having so many different superstars, what differentiates a team from winning a championship, in my opinion, is the impact of a role player. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. So really keen to get onto that. And once again, before we start, as mentioned, I do episodes every week on Wednesdays. You can follow me on all my social media to keep up with the latest news and kind of just immerse with myself, and also immerse with the community that I'm trying to build up as well. And for those that have been supporting, listening to the podcast, I can't stress enough how much support I've been getting. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'm honestly super keen to see where this goes on this journey. So I hope that you guys can follow with me and really like the content that I'm putting out. So without further ado, I say let's begin. So before diving into how role players impact certain teams and underappreciated, we have to first define what exactly is a role player. So we hear that term get thrown out a lot, especially I think in a basketball setting. But what a role player is essentially something that we need to kind of unravel. And it can be anyone that's part of the team. So not necessarily the star, of course. The star is obviously their main player, the franchise player. Even in any sport, there's always that one or two or three note-to-note star players. But these, role players are not the stars, but they're a key piece in a team and in a system that drives, the chances of winning and the motivations to win. A lot of these role players are quote unquote the heart and soul of the team, the person that is the one that makes the sacrifice. And some examples of this would be mainly like those defensive specialist players in basketball, the ones that are, instead of getting their shots, are taking the best offensive players on as their key opposition and objective to stop them from scoring and having a bad day and giving up their offensive load in that aspect. You've also got 6 men who come off the bench, and their role is to create a spark for the team and try get the team going, or can continue to go while the starters get a rest. And then into other sports such as football and soccer, you've got the system players, the ones that have a certain role within a certain system that played. So maybe if you're a certain midfielder, your role is to break up the play, make intercepts, and play the passes. And I relate most to that. So as mentioned, when I actually started playing football, I decided that I wasn't going to be a star, or it wasn't decided by me, but it was probably decided by my footballing ability. I tried to, I guess, find ways to immerse in my role as a player, and that was to be a disruptive force in the midfield, winning certain balls and then playing the balls to the stars so they could do all the work. So in a sense of system players, that would be someone from a certain team. There are many examples of that. The one that I can probably best look at is Fred from Man United. When he used to play there, his role was to simply break up the defensive play, win balls, and give the balls to the stars. It may have not been as successful in Manchester United, but people forget to realize that this was very successful in Brazil when he played for the national team there. He was always starting, despite how many stars Brazil had, because he was able to play that role to the best of his ability. So that can be another example of that certain role player. You've also got the super subs from football as well that come off the bench, and their simple role is to make an impact and score or create a goal. This person might be good enough to play and start in another team, but they're buying into the role of coming off the bench in a successful team, doing what's best for the team and trying to help them win by scoring the goal or creating an assist or creating a chance for them to score. And the reason why teams rely on them is because every team needs balance. So you've always seen it, like even in NBA, you see super teams get created and they never seem to really work out because not everyone can buy into a certain role. So these players that decide that they're going to buy into a certain role and sacrifice their kind of stardom to help the team is super important when it comes to team sports, because not everyone can be the guy, not everyone can be the person that's going to lead the team forward with their star abilities and I guess their talents. So they need to find other ways. And in another sense is another way for them to stay in the league or to stay in a team is that they actually need to play this role for the team to succeed or for them to stay relevant and playing at the highest level possible. And these are both noticed in basketball mainly, but also in soccer as well. You also have it in NFL too, especially the line players. There may not be a certain sacrifice that comes with NFL players being on the offensive or defensive lines, but they have to be they are very vital when it comes to a team potentially winning or not, because they're the ones that are doing the blocking to protect the quarterbacks on the offensive side, or they're the ones trying to break through the wall and tackle the quarterback to put as much pressure on them as possible, because they want to obviously win the game and give the quarterback no room to make a killer pass, for example. So those role players in NFL are extremely important too, and something that's kind of looked over when all the media and all the attention is focused mainly on the quarterback and also the wide receivers and running backs who are the ones that score the touchdown. And I'm not saying that that's the wrong thing to do, like to praise a quarterback, praise a running back, praise a wide receiver, or even praise star players, because in the end of the day, results come from scoring, results come from goals and stuff. But what I'm probably encouraging you guys to look at is the other side and see how these role players impact to winning, and how sacrifice and I guess putting the team first before yourself is values that you can take into your life to help succeed in your way as well. Because I think we're in a world where everyone wants to be the number one person, everyone wants to be the man and stuff. But I think in the community and society, if we have people that can kind of sacrifice and do what's best for life and best for community in all aspects, whether it's work, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your friends, then I think more stuff in life would be more functional, especially in family dynamics, at work when we have issues with a team, or if we need people to kind of step up, and also with your friends as well, because there might be times where your friend's going through struggles and they're not expected to be there, and you need to kind of play a role in supporting them. I know if that makes sense, but I think that's where I draw those kind of examples relating to everyday life in that role player too. But yeah, they're so important as well, because that key to buy in, if you're buying in, it really shows that your team is together as well. If certain players will play a role, they, I guess, make an impact into society. So we sort of touched up on football, but I want to kind of dive deeper into American football and how the role player kind of impacts them through the linesman, and that's protecting the quarterbacks as mentioned. But you've also got those special teams who play a massive role as well, because they're not always on the pitch, but they are actually very important when it comes to that team camaraderie, because a lot of those special teams players do want to be in the main defensive or offensive teams, but they're willing to sacrifice their roles for the better of the team as well. And that's something that's extremely important, because in the end, when you have a roster of over 50 people, you need at least 80% of the team not necessarily being happy with the roles that they're playing, but actually buying in and doing them to the best of the ability. And that's where a lot of teams kind of win the Super Bowls, is when teams are kind of camaradered together as well. So that's extremely important. And again, touching up on the linemen as well, they may not get the flashy contracts, they may not have the media attention, but they are extremely important when it comes to winning games. Because if you see a lot of Super Bowl finals, especially the most recent one with Kansas and Philly, you saw that the Philadelphia defense was the reason why they won the game, and that was because their linemen was so strong to overcome the offensive linemen of Kansas, which was shocking. They were unable to protect their quarterback. Therefore, Kansas wasn't able to get anything going on offense, but Philly's defense bought in so hard, and their linemen bought in so hard to be able to put pressure on Mahomes, give that strength, and kind of lead them to the eventual Super Bowl. And yes, we had Jalen Hurts that performed extremely well. We know that, and of course, that contributed to it. But again, if it wasn't for the defensive effort of that linesman, they probably would have never been able to get to that Super Bowl championship, because of the fact that Mahomes is so great. And that's what kind of the main thing led to that. And if you really notice with NFL, a lot of the times NFL teams, one time they're winning and one time they're losing. Maybe it takes one quarterback, but it does stem from having strong linemen to protect that, and also strong linemen defensively to prevent quarterbacks from getting touchdowns as well, and getting good throws or carrying yards. So just something to I guess consider there within American football, and how role players are important. If you haven't really thought about it as well, if you're not really into NFL, again, I've put a podcast on how to get into sports, so that may be something that you could listen to and get some advice from. But really looking at the impact of a lineman, and seeing how important that is in a role of a sport that is consisted of over 50 athletes in a team. So that one is, I guess, very vital. And then we have basketball. So we used to see a lot of like defensive men. So back in the day, you had Rodman, that was the key role player for the Chicago Bulls' team, and also Steve Kerr coming off the bench and being a spark shooter. Those players were massive role players when it came to Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen's success, and also Chicago Bulls' success overall. But as we moved over to a generation where teams are starting to shoot more threes, and it's become a very much three-point dominant league, we've seen the rise of these 3-and-D players. So a 3-and-D player, for those that don't know who are not into basketball, are players that their role are simply to shoot threes and then play defense on the other side. So notable examples would include, for me personally, would be Bruce Brown, PJ Tucker, and Alex Caruso. The reason why I mentioned Bruce Brown and PJ Tucker, for those that don't know, is because they've been key contributors to championships in the past. The Milwaukee Bucks winning the championship was based on PJ Tucker's 3-and-D, and also Bruce Brown for the Denver Nuggets. And if you can notice now, if you are a basketball fan, since Bruce Brown left the Nuggets, they haven't been able to go back to the championships. Maybe they'll go back this year. But again, PJ Tucker as well back at the Bucks. They haven't been able to go there as well. And last year, I would say one of the players, if I was to come on top of my head, who was a key 3-and-D player that led the Mavericks to the NBA Finals, was Derrick Jones Jr. And Derrick Jones Jr. is a massive example of him buying into a role, because when he first came into the league, he was a player that was just athletically gifted. He was only known for his slam dunks and winning the dunk contest, but he wasn't able to find a role. After multiple teams searching and looking into, he finally landed his role with the Dallas Mavericks. He became a key notable role player for them, leading them into the championship final. And all he did was play defense and shoot threes. That was his role, and he did it to perfection. And it led him to get a $40 million contract to play for the Clippers as well. And if you see in the NBA, a lot of teams are looking for that 3-and-D player when it comes to winning a championship, because that is the key to winning things. And you can see a lot of teams pay those players big money to have them in their team, but eventually you see contending teams trade for those type of players always for first or second round picks, because it realistically is one of the key ways to win a championship in basketball in these eras. And if you look at probably a dynasty example, most recent, is the Golden State Warriors. We obviously know about Stephen Curry, we know about Kevin Durant when he came, we know about Klay Thompson when he came as well. And we forget to realize that they also had some key role players. So most notably, we know about Andre Iguodala, who came off the bench as a sixth man and created that spark for them, and also Draymond Green, he's very misunderstood. Obviously, he's very controversial. He's disliked and hated by a lot of fans. And I'm going to have an episode talking about players like Draymond Green in the future. But just to kind of summarize that, people need to realize that Draymond Green's attitude and tenacity comes from the fact that that is a winning formula. The way he was, and if he wasn't how he is, the Golden State Warriors would have never won a championship. And quite frankly, he diminished his role in the betterment of a team. To play defense, to sort of be the trash talker, be the person that everyone drew their attention to, allowing for players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and then back when Kevin Durant joined a little later, to flourish as those stars and athletes. And that was the ultimate kind of self-sacrifice, and it's something that is extremely credible, if I'm honest. And that's what I guess the role player defines, is someone that, is self-sacrificial, someone that's willing to put their egos aside for the betterment of the team. And that's something that's extremely powerful. That's something that I credit, and I value those things personally, because as a person, I do want to make sacrifices for the betterment of other people, and I do want to help my team in a sense of obviously a sport team, but in my life, my team, my community of people, to win as well. Because in the end, you can't do this life alone. To succeed, you're always going to need people around you. You can't be selfish. You can't always think that everything's going to happen because of yourself. Yes, you need to drive yourself. You need to have that motivation to do things. But again, you have to have people in your corner that support you. And also, guess by having those people, you need to sacrifice. And I think that's what's so valuable about a role player in basketball. And the last example I'm probably going to give is, this is probably the best example. And personally, it changed my opinion on this certain player, because before, I'm not going to say I loved him or I loved his game. I found him very arrogant. But after seeing what he did in the Olympics, really changed my perspective on this person. And again, as I grow into this life, and I've mentioned this in the past, I've been a person that's abused athletes as a kid, not knowing and not being kind of smart enough to understand what these guys go through. And that's been my journey as well. So it hasn't been a perfect road for me, but I've tried to build up to be a better person in that aspect and really understand these athletes' lives. And that's why I've created this podcast as well, to encourage you guys to do the same. But without blabbering on, the person I'm talking about is Devin Booker. So if you watch the Olympics, the team was stacked this year. And I mean, by stacked, I mean unbelievably stacked, to a point where Jason Tatum, who won the championship, was struggling to get minutes. Tyrese Halliburton, who is the franchise player of the Indiana Pacers, failed to get on the court. He couldn't even get on the court because you had the likes of LeBron, KD, Steph Curry, Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and a few others. I'm not going to name them all, but Devin Booker was also part of this team. And for those that know Devin Booker, he is, essentially B1, B2 of the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant, and he's been there his whole life since he's been drafted, and he's always been the star and main player. What he did in the Olympics was he bought into a defensive-minded role. And if for those that don't know Devin Booker, he's never been known to play any sort of defense. So he came into the Olympics and played a completely different role to what got him successful as an NBA star. And why did he do it? Because he wanted to get a gold medal, because he wanted to win and be successful with the USA national team. Now, if that's not something that could strike your ego, I can't tell you what is, because you've got Kevin Durant, you've got Steph Curry, you know they're legacy players, you know they're the stars, and you know you're a star in your own right yourself, but you're still willing to sacrifice your own ego to help the team and win. And if Devin Booker decided that, no, fuck them, I'm going to play my role that I've done in Phoenix and be the man and be successful, that's obviously selfish, one, and two, that's obviously going to be a detriment to the team in the locker. He sacrificed his identity to help the team, and that's something that's truly amazing. And that's why, yes, people can say that the team was overpowered and they were going to win, but in the end, he sacrificed a role for the betterment of the team. Because in the end, yes, they're the best team in the league, or in the world, but they've obviously seen the rise of France, the rise of Serbia, the rise of Canada, and how they are kind of elevating and how the world is elevating, catching up to the US. And you're going to need role players to help stop those stars from winning games. So again, extreme praise for Devin Booker for sacrificing his role for the betterment of the team. And he's probably the biggest example I can say because of the magnitude of stardom that the USA national team had. And we're going to actually, as funny as you say, there's a documentary called Court of Gold. So if you haven't watched it, watch that documentary. If you also want to get into basketball and understand, I guess, the journey of all these Olympic athletes or basketball players in future, it's really good. And I'm gonna potentially have a podcast to episode to discuss that series as well. So don't want to dive into too much, but again, trying to put my hands into different hats and see where I can explore everything as well. But moving on, we're going to move on to football, soccer now, and how the role players are still important there. Now we're getting, again, I mentioned Fred being that defensive-minded, box-to-box player disruptor for Brazil. These tactical certain players are very important in systems that are required to win. So I love to use United as an example because I watch them the most and it's my team. But do you guys remember the game where it was Chelsea versus United, and at the time Hazard was probably one of the world's best players? And Mourinho put out a tactic to Ander Herrera and basically said to him, you need to follow him the whole game. To a point where Ander Herrera was playing right centre-back at a stage because his job was to only stop Eden Hazard. So if you think about it in perspective, right? You're a footballer. Your job, and you really want to enjoy playing. You want to get on the ball, you want to win, you want to score goals, you want to be the star. That's probably our egos inside us saying that. And your coach goes up to you and says, look, this game, you're probably not going to touch the ball. Your job is literally to follow Eden Hazard. If he walks to the fucking change room, you go with him. That's what Mourinho said. If he goes out to the street to go get a coffee, you're with him. You do not leave his sight. That's extremely sacrificial because you're not only helping the team out, but you're giving up, again, as mentioned before, your normal role and what you're adjusted to. So Ander Herrera doing that was a massive example, and it really helped United get the win that game. And it was, again, a tactical decision, and you need those type of players to make those tactical decisions. So that's another example why role players are extremely important. Another example is N'Golo Kante for Chelsea. When he joined the team, he wasn't a star. He got his credits and notice, but his role was to literally be an interceptor and a defensive player. And without him, even for France in the World Cup, with all those star players of Pogba, Griezmann, and Mbappe, Kante was the heart and soul of that team. He was the engine that drove the success of France to win the World Cup. And he was also the engine that drove the success of Chelsea winning multiple leagues, Leicester winning a league, and also him winning the Champions League. And that guy completed football being just a simple role player. And one day we are going to talk about Leicester's league run, because let's just say we haven't heard about it in a long time, but every time I hear about Leicester winning the league, it's probably the most fucked thing I've ever witnessed. Like, in sense of sporting achievements, Leicester City winning a Premier League, I just can't believe it. Like, how the fuck did they do it? Like, I still wonder how they did it. Like, it will go down as probably the biggest underdog story in sporting history, and I really hope for that as well. Oh, another little podcast here, underdog story. So look, lots of things to get through. So as my mind kind of started racing, I just started thinking about all these potential topics. It's fucking exciting. It's keen, but you can see how much passion I have for a role player. It might be because, yes, as mentioned, I play sports and I love being the role player. But I hope these examples are resonating with you. That's kind of where I'm going at. So yeah, I think the mentality, if we're going to go into the mentality thing, is on those key points, is the selflessness required to embrace the role. Why some players also struggle when asked to change roles. So the contrary now is a lot of players, of course, are going to struggle because they're used to one certain thing. So if a coach is telling you to do something different, it's scary, but it's also difficult because you're making a huge adjustment. But if you're able to kind of commit to that adjustment, the rewards will reap in the future. And I think that's what athletes look at when they sacrifice their role. They're looking at the bigger picture. They're looking at the fact that if I do this, we're going to fucking win games. And if we win games, that's super important. It's a character building thing. It goes more beyond yourself. And again, it helps the team overall. So there are going to be players that, struggle with this. I'm sure that when Jason Tatum was in the Olympic team, he struggled with not playing. I remember, now making this about myself, I was part of the university team at RMIT. And quite frankly, we won the championship. And I say to you that it's probably one of the biggest achievements I have. But what I don't say is the fact that probably from the quarterfinals to the semifinals to the finals, I played fuck all minutes. I don't think I touched the floor. I didn't even get on the pitch or the court when I was playing. But obviously I was frustrated at the start because I wasn't playing. But then as I kind of realized, I understood that this is more than myself. How can I help impact the team? And the way that I personally tried to impact the team was when we went out at nights after the games, just have that camaraderie culture, build a kind of environment, showing my happy face and stuff. Because I didn't want to be sluggish and down because I wasn't playing matches. I wanted to be happy and excited because our team was winning, was gonna win a medal. And I know it sounds crazy, but the one thing that was made on my mind is because being in Gold Coast and having that kind of party scene as well. Because uni games, for those that don't play, I recommend anyone that is in university to play uni games. You go to a certain state that holds the tournament, and all the sports are playing. It's kind of like a mini Olympics. You're there for a week, and you essentially play the sport that you get selected in. And if you win a medal, and you're the best university in Australia for that specific sport. So we're in Gold Coast, right? And I just thought if we were to win the medal, the celebration and the party after would be fucking insane. So that's kind of why I stepped back and I thought, if I'm going to be moody, depressed, that I'm not playing, then I'm not going to be able to enjoy my time here at Gold Coast. Like I'm one of 12 people in my university that is going on to represent my university in a futsal team. And there's a lot of players in NBA, in soccer, that are one of 16 that are in a professional squad. So for me, yes, it's hard. You want to be part of it. You want to win. It feels better when you're playing in the sport and you're actually involved in the success and you're a key contributor. But again, the other side is if you're winning, you're still part of it, and there's ways you can get involved. And I don't mean to blabber on and make it about myself, but essentially what I'm saying is players struggle because they want to be part. They want to feel good. They want to be involved in that and be like, oh, yep, I was the person that was part of it. But again, as a team setting, you're technically still part of that success and winning. And there are ways, even if you don't play, to succeed. And that can be while on the pitch, giving out encouragement. Our bench, I think 5 of us, it wasn't just me that wasn't playing the final. 4 of us didn't play. We were the biggest cheerleaders. We were the biggest encouragers. When the other team had the ball, we'd hold the ball and like time waste and get them frustrated. We'd sledge them on the pitch because we wanted to motivate our team. And it spoke volumes because they were able to be kind of G'd up. And also, even like if you're someone that actually is a star player, I think what frustrates you is not getting support from your teammates as well, because they're bitter that they're taking your role. They don't have your situation. They're looking at your jealousy. They're looking at the fact that, oh, they wish they were me. But if you have someone that's supporting you on your side, it makes you want to fight for them more, because in the end, it's more about yourself. And that's the key to team success. And I guess that's the only reason why I'd say some people struggle, is because they want to be that person. But again, when you are changing roles and when you're doing something beneficial for the team, you're going to have those success and rewards. And I celebrated like I won the fucking thing and I scored a hat trick and played the whole game. So I was happy. It could have been a lot worse if I was bitter and saying, oh, I didn't play, that's why we lost. Like, that's not true. The reason why we won is because the whole team did it. And I take part of that, and I'm proud of that, even if I didn't play. So that's probably another thing that separates a role player from and shows why that's important. And then how great teams, convince players to buy in is another one. I think the way to convince is again, it's up to the role player itself, and if they really want to win. And that's something that I think it comes down to. If you want to win, you will sacrifice and you will play your role. So these players sacrificed because they understood. They didn't really necessarily actually need to be convinced. They knew what was required for them to help the team win, and that was to sacrifice, and that was to play a certain role. And anyone that does do that is willingly knowing what they're doing, I would like to think. So I kind of touched up on how this kind of impacts on our everyday lives with our workplace, with our friends and family, and also with, I guess, our communities. But I kind of want to dive deep more into this because of the fact that, again, the Huddle Within is about looking at these sports experiences and going beyond the game and seeing really how it impacts our everyday life. So touching up on, the workplace parallel. In a lot of businesses, you have those CEOs, top executives, and people in workplace that are extremely successful. But in the end, a company without skilled employees being in charge of marketing, without people that are in customer service, I don't think there would be any CEOs as well. Those that are accountants that have to write the books and kind of give the financial reviews, they're not able to kind of plan things. So there's so many heads and minds that go into a functional workplace, and that's something that is, I guess, underappreciated too. I know a lot of us that go to work go in and they don't really enjoy what they do, because the truth of the matter is they're not getting enough credit to what they're actually doing and how much they're contributing to the workforce or to the team. So when you go into your job, you're probably making a massive contribution, but that credit is going just to your CEO. And that's what frustrates me about work, and again, bringing into my daily life and how I play, is because as a role player, as a worker, as a digital marketer, I want to have credit as what I do. And I think everyone does. And that's why they don't have any sense of purpose as well, because they're not getting the props. What you're doing for work, you are contributing to $1 million functional business. Without your contribution, without your role into your company or your job or your work, your CEO, your boss, is not able to be the successful person they are. So really understand that when you go into work, and understand that your role is extremely important. And I think CEOs, media needs to do a better job in promoting that within the workforce, because like sporting players, they don't get the credits for being role players, and it's kind of the same in our human lives. And I can see where the frustration kind of aligns there. Every role is valuable, same as a championship team. So again, and then the workplace, in a sense of like sporting clubs, as mentioned, we talked about role players within a team, of an actual like competing team, but there's also role players that work outside the team, like even as the club as a whole. Like what about the cleaning staff, the people that put out clothes and kind of gets everything organized before a match day, the event staffs, the kitchen, the cooks, the people that make the meals, that take their time to give their athletes the best nutrition, the physios, the doctors, the ones that are in charge of making sure these athletes stay fit and stay, ready for a game all the time. Even the ones that are injured, the ones that try to recover them and make sure that they're going to be in the optimal form to return to playing in basketball, or soccer or any other sport. So these people are role players in their own sense, because they're helping a championship team win matches as well. Because without them, without chefs, without fucking physios, doctors, without medical staff, without events managers bring in and promote the team to the world. So without them, you're not going to have fans. Without the doctors and medicals, you're going to have players that are just going to be injured and never come back. So you're never going to get the best quality player out there. Without the food and the nutrition aspect of the chefs and stuff, you're not going to have healthy athletes eating the right food. So these things play such a big role into sport as well. And again, going back to CEOs, going back to businesses, without you as an employee, that company does not function and go. And I think that gets real underappreciated. I think the same goes within families and community as well. And this one's going to be a bit personal as well. Parents, they're always doing what's best for us. They're sacrificing their lives for us as kids. And it's something that gets underappreciated too. Because in the end, and it is their choice to have kids, but when you have a kid into your life, you want them to be the best. And that might mean to sacrifice your own goals and your own things. And parents have done a lot for kids to sacrifice and stuff. My mum's a single mother. She pretty much stopped her life to raise me. So every day I do appreciate that. But there's times where I think it goes unnoticed, and it doesn't get noticed by myself. So it's something that we as humans also need to incorporate in our lives, and really appreciate the role players that are in our families too, our parents or even our siblings. I haven't had siblings, so I can't relate to that, but I'm sure there'd be siblings and people out there that you relate to, of course. So definitely impacts our families. They're role players in our lives, because in the end we're the stars in our life, in our first person perspective, but we have so many role models and family members that help us drive to our success and support us. Because without my mum and my family, I'm unable to be here, sit down and listen and talk to you guys on a podcast, if I'm being honest. And that's something that I guess gets overlooked as well. Role players in life too. And then in community, we also have a lot of teachers, firefighters, nurses, social workers, community workers that their lives and careers are solely put into sacrificing for the betterment of society and the world and helping. And yes, they get paid, but their purpose is fulfilled by helping others. And that's something that's really self-sacrificial as well, especially firefighters who are putting their lives on the line to save burning buildings, police officers who go into the world and try to solve crime. So these things, I think, also get unappreciated. We get a lot of things in media criticizing police officers for not handling a situation correctly, but when do we ever say, well done to a cop for catching a criminal? It's always, oh, the criminal is a bad person, this, but we never talk about the cops that probably go through so much to I guess, arrest a person and then investigate and understand what's going on to be able to keep the streets clean. And I have a friend cop, and he tells me these experiences all the time. So when I hear his stories, I really try empathize with that and understand that he's actually playing a role in our society for it to be cleaner and better too. And without them, yeah, society falls apart. So all these people that are contributing to society and making society a better place do get underappreciated too. And again, without these people, if we don't have cops, if we don't have nurses, if we don't have firefighters, if we don't have teachers get scrutinized crazily, but they're the ones that are providing education for us. And without them, we're unable to really function as a human race. So I think, again, the role player helps a championship winning team, and these people help, I guess, a championship winning society and life, where we can have the best opportunities for our future and dream big and do things that we love as well. And the last one I want to touch up on is friendships. Having a good community of friends, having someone that always pushes you to be better. I know without my friends, I wouldn't be able to do this podcast as well and wouldn't have the support, because most of the time when I'm discussing things about my friends, it's sports. And those that are my friends, you know how hard it is to deal with my shit. So when you're listening to me just blabber on and talk and nonstop, you're actually making a sacrifice to allow me to speak and give me a platform to talk about it. So my mates, thank you. My family, thank you as well. But again, this is my point where I say that the role player is so important when it comes to our lives, because there's times where you're not always going to get the spotlight, even with your friends. You're not always going to be the one that's talked about. You're not always going to be someone that, I guess, everyone has attention to. So finding a way to make yourself valuable in your group of friends goes a long way. And it definitely, for my friends that do that, gives me a lot of confidence as well. So I think the main lessons that I would say is that having the self-awareness is probably the biggest superpower. Understanding that there are times where you will not be the main guy, but that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you can't contribute to society. You don't have to be the number one celebrity in the world, the best looking person, the best player in the world to have a contribution to someone's life and to someone in society. So I think role players in sport define that, and that's why I resonate with that a lot, and that's why I try to take that role player approach in my life. And also, understanding that this is what I'm meant to do. And being able to contribute to that. And if you're doing what you're meant to do, you're going to help the world and you're going to help yourself, most importantly, as well. Being adaptable also matters, though. There are times where, you might be used to being the star, you might used to being a certain way, but there are times where you need to be adaptable, you need to make a sacrifice, whether that's to, I know it sounds small, but you might be with your friends, you might be doing something that I guess you prefer, and then a family member calls you and says, look, we need help. I need you to do this. Can you do it? Maybe you don't know how to do it. Maybe you don't want to fucking do it. But at the end of the day, you're sacrificing, not a role, but a task that you're doing for someone else that probably needs your help. And that's where I think adaptability matters. And you see that in sports stars as well, especially with Devin Booker. He was able to adapt to be a role player in the Olympics and lead that kind of success. And that also leads to the sacrifice as well. So sometimes you just need to make sacrifices. So we always want our personal glory, we always want things for ourselves. But in the end, if you're making sacrifices for the betterment of society and the betterment of yourself, the rewards will come in the future. I'm confident that if you do sacrifice for the better and you compromise things sometimes, you will get the reward in return. You will get people that are appreciative. They might repay the favor. But again, it just grows into your character as well. So I guess my final thoughts on this topic, which I've honestly probably really enjoyed talking to you about this. This has probably been one of my favorite topics. I've always thought about how I could speak about this in an episode or in life as well. So I really hope again you've resonated with it. You can't win without role players, and with the world doesn't function without everyday heroes playing their part. Instead of only just always wanting to chase the spotlight, sometimes the most rewarding thing is knowing you've made an impact, and whether or not you get the credit. And I've got to say, there are times where I'm human and I'm not perfect, and when I do something, I'm expecting credit, and that comes from personal insecurities and wanting to succeed and stuff. But I guess if you're not expecting something in return, some way or somewhat, you're going to get that return back in ways that you probably not expect, or if not better. But again, doing it because you want to change the world, you want to make an impact on society, is probably something that's extremely key. And I think a lot of these role players do that, knowing that they're probably not going to get the credit from media, but what they will ultimately get is success, and even their own self worth improves. So that's probably another take. And then the final one I think I'll leave to you guys is, who are the role players in your life? And then if you are a role player yourself, how do you embrace your own role in your own life in a bigger picture when it comes to your lives every day, or even when you're playing a sport? Essentially, how do you sacrifice, have that self-awareness, and also adapt to be better and play a role in this world and in the sporting world too? So leave your answers in the comments there. And before we go, just want to wrap up what we've spoke about today. The role players are often the difference between winning and losing, which we've mentioned. They may not always get the glory, but their impact is most definitely undeniable. And I really hope you kind of realize that after listening to this episode. And finally, their mentality and teamwork are lessons we can also apply into our lives, whether, as mentioned, is with work, with our communities, with our families, and with our friends. And I guess one more question that I want to ask you guys to also leave in the comments. Who is your favorite role player of all time? And I think to answer that myself, probably my favorite role player of all time. It's such a tough question, if I'm honest, and it's hard to answer because unfortunately I haven't been able to see successes in my teams as of late. Besides Collingwood, to give you like my favorite role player in life, but I would say the one that is probably the best role player and has shown so much success is probably N'Golo Kante. I would say that we've mentioned. I think he is probably my favorite player of all time, and he does get the credit there. So I have to say that probably gives him that extra boost because he's probably the best role player of all time as well. But again, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about the impact of role players as well. And I will catch you guys on next week's episode. Cheers. That's a wrap for this week's episode of the Huddle Within podcast. I appreciate you for tuning in and being part of the community where we go beyond the game into what really matters. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who sees sports just the way that we do. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on my social medias, which will be linked down on the episode below and also into the podcast description. Send in your thoughts or even be part of a future episode. Until next time, keep that passion alive, stay in the huddle, and remember, it's always deeper than the game. Until next time, cheers.